Hello and welcome to Esri's Fire and Emergency Services webinar series. And today we're discussing GIS for identifying risk and target hazards. So thank you for joining us. It'll be very informative. We got a pretty good group, a group of 5 professionals today to support you in your efforts to identify risk to firefighters, risk to occupants, and to support preparedness and operational efforts within your community. So a couple of housekeeping items. There will be a recording of the webinar that you'll be able to access once it's completed. And we will email all attendees pertinent links, including contact information to if there's any follow-up issues or if you have any other questions after the webinar has ended. So today's webinar, again, we're talking about risk assessment for target hazards, but we have some special guests supporting us today. Kevin Collier from one of our partners, First Do Size Up, doing amazing work supporting fire departments doing pre-plans. And also Betsy Chatham, GIS manager from the city of Grapevine, Texas, who's got a long history of successfully using GIS to support her public safety agencies in their region. So the use of GIS in public safety is expanding daily, and we are able to bring together disparate data sources to deal with the complex issues facing public safety, because we can't just continue to throw personnel apparatus at these problems. We have to be able to collect data, analyze it, understand what's occurring in our communities, and then be able to communicate that understanding, be able to show what these incidents are doing to our communities in a visual manner. So GIS provides that platform and allows us to do that. And certainly WebGIS and ArcGIS Online provides a very flexible way to integrate all types of data, not just your standard mapping data, but when you think about bringing in CAD data or 3D modeling through LiDAR, UAS data, drone imagery, things of that nature, easily integrated into one view to help you understand what your issues are and to build efficiencies into your response and your resource deployment. So we're going to talk today specifically about using data that you already have, particularly your building layers and your parcel layers, to be able to do a size up or an assessment of every single structure that you consider a target hazard, or to help you identify what those target hazards are. But nearly any process we do in public safety begins with a risk assessment. So whether we're talking about an operational issue, whether we're talking about planning, whether we're talking about mitigation projects or recovery plans, we always start with that risk assessment. And there are multiple data sources that you already have access to in a locality, in a local state government, or even at the national level, that you can bring together to help you identify risks. And that can include, like we discussed earlier, the parcel layer, your building information, but also the data that we can provide through our Living Atlas, the ability to put all that data together in one workflow, which we're going to discuss today, and provide you that risk assessment. So you understand not only what's happening. So when you pull data out of a records management system, like you can see here, you typically get that database view on the left, which does tell us a lot of information. It tells us, yeah, we had some incidents. Yes, we had some dollar loss. Yes, we impacted our community, but it doesn't tell us where those issues are occurring. And it certainly doesn't tell us who those issues are affecting. So why not give it that geospatial context? Why not do that risk assessment, within that GIS platform, to understand not just what's happening, where it's happening, and also understand who it's happening to? Because throughout that risk assessment, you can also begin to add demographic data that you have access to locally or that we provide, that can really give a good picture and allow you to understand the characteristics of the community that you serve. This is a shot of our community analyst, a very simple application to use. I mean, and you can generate some pretty astounding data about the community. So we bring all that together to understand where's our risk, where's our potential property loss, but also where's our potential life hazards. And it's very important to understand, where that is. So if you're doing an evacuation or have a significant occupancy, to understand what the life risk is if there's a disaster, natural disaster, flooding, hurricane, wildfire, something of that nature, and understand exactly where in the community, what is happening and who is it happening to. So with the target hazard analysis, we often see the ability to identify and actually provide levels of hazard or levels of risk to individual occupancies. And that can be easily operationalized to help you deploy resources in an appropriate manner. So a lot of the assessments you'll see with community risk assessment or community risk reduction program, or with the accreditation process, you'll see agencies do risk assessment over an area. So they'll do a first do area, they'll do a square mile. But why don't we do just what we're discussing today and do an assessment of every single address point within a locality. Pull in that parcel layer and pull in, the layers for infrastructure, whatever might be the case, such as the water supply system, and understand exactly the risk in that individual address point, and then be able to dispatch or deploy resources specific to that address point. Because I can tell you, a lot of departments, and historically where I came from, we did the same thing. Was a single family dwelling was a single family dwelling. Didn't matter if it was an 800 square foot bungalow or a 6,000 square foot McMansion with the rural water supply problem. And a commercial was a commercial. So it didn't matter if it was a 5,000 square foot convenience store or a 35,000 square foot big box store. We were sending the same number of resources, same number of firefighters, same number of apparatus to those, just because of the title of the occupancy type. And if you do a job task analysis, that's kind of ridiculous. I mean, if you look at what you have to do, say in an 8-story nursing home versus a single-story convenience store, obviously two completely different job tasks. Analysis will show that there are two completely different resource models you need to dispatch to those occupancy rates. So we can use things like our target hazard solution, which was recently updated. We can use things like what First Do provides in their size up program and their pre-plan program to better identify what resources are needed to deploy to these specific addresses, to these specific occupancies in your locality, and to operationalize that and provide that data to the front of a fire truck, to the front of a police car, to the front of an ambulance, so that these responders can actually see and use that data, use that information before they get to the incident. No more pulling out the 3-ring binder after you knock the fire down, right? No more, of trying to find who's got the most up-to-date pre-plan. Everybody's sharing the same information on one platform and getting the most updated incident intelligence they can in real time. So they're actually using this data before they get to the incident. So it's pretty impressive there. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to turn it over to Walter Potts. He's the lead of our solutions development team, and he worked diligently on the target hazard analysis he's getting ready to demonstrate. And will give us a short overview of that, and before we get into a deeper demonstration. So Walt, I'll turn it over to you.
Very good, Mike. Thanks so much for the introduction there. I'm just going to share my screen here. As Mike mentioned, target hazard analysis has been updated recently. It is a configuration of ArcGIS Pro. Those of you that have been around a while may have known that it was a previous version was using ArcMap. We've updated it to make it a little simpler for you to use. I want to tell you a little bit about how the target hazard analysis works, and then Kevin's going to give you a little demonstration using it. The first thing you need to know, as Mike mentioned earlier, you can use either building data, if you have building footprint data, or tax parcel data, to generate a risk score for every location or property in your community. It evaluates that risk in these 6 categories. So we've used occupancy type, the life safety type, fire flow, that is the amount of water is going to be needed to put out a fully engulfed fire at that particular location. The economic impact, if you were to totally lose that property in your community, the building area, and the building height. So those are the main categories. Each of those categories then can also be weighted to create a total risk score, as you can see in the example over there on the right. Once you've done that analysis, then you can share that information so that it can help you prioritize where you want to do pre-incident planning, where you want to do operational response plans, and so on. So that's a little bit about what ArcGIS Pro and the target hazard analysis is. As I mentioned, if when you deploy, by the way, it's free. You can just go to our solution site, and I'll show you that a link right here. You can get the Pro package, as you see here. It contains a set of tasks, which I'm going to go over here a little bit, and some sample data, so you can kind of walk through it and use it with the sample data first, and then use it with your own data. When you perform the target hazard analysis, there's a couple of things you need to keep in mind. Again, as Mike mentioned, you need to get access to building data. If you can get access to building footprint data, that's the best part, and then potentially some tax parcel data. The key information that you're going to need in there to be able to do the assignment of the hazard type criteria are those 4 values there, those attributes. Building value, what's the building worth to the community? What's the use description assigned to that particular building or property? What's the total area? If you have a number of stores in there, a number of floors there, how high is it? And then also you want to, once you have that, you can create what we call the occupancy type category. So you can use that use description to be able to assign one of these occupancy types that you see in this little box here. And there's a drop down that you can use to be able to assign that to each property. The next step is to create the light safety categories from each of them. And those are a combination of the floors, the number of floors, and the occupancy type. So you can see some examples there. They are awake and ambulatory, they're asleep and ambulatory, or they're non-ambulatory and restrained, and it's over 2 stories. So that would be a much higher risk. Once we have the hazard type criteria assigned, then we can start calculating it. It walks you through two main steps here. Basically, the first step is to rank the criticality for each one of the hazard types. So in the little screenshot you can see here is we have the occupancy criticality so that we've assigned it. So we've said that 5 is a higher score for industrial than 1 for utility or storage sheds. Once we have that done, then we can set the weights for each type of hazard. So you can see here down at the bottom, we have the occupancy type set to 25% of the total and the economic impact set to 5. So you can decide how you want to weight these and how you want to assign your criticality scores. Once you've done the scoring, then you can symbolize the results of it. And you can see in this little screenshot here, we've used a graduated color to show which ones are more severe, which ones has a higher hazard score. And then we can send that information over to a web GIS application, as Kevin is going to demonstrate here in a few minutes. What I want to show you now is what it looks like. So here's an example of the target hazard analysis. It is a configuration of ArcGIS Pro, so you can see all the options that you get when you're in ArcGIS Pro. Over on the left side, you can see we have some sample data in here. We just have a small sample set here, some parcels and some buildings. And then over on the right, you see the list of tasks. The first set of tasks over here allows you to be able to get started. So it just walks you through the process. What is it? How do I use it? What are the different criteria and so on. And then the next step talks a little bit about the data requirements. What is it I need to have? What are those 4 attributes that I need to have before I can get started? So now that I've got a kind of overview of what it is, I can start using it. And again, then I can use the sample data and use the parcel or the building data in here. In this case here, we're going to add them to our map. Then we might want to join the parcel data to the building. So if you have like assessment data that you get with like the value of the property, perhaps some other information like the building area for assessment purposes, the number of floors and so on, that information then can be joined to the building layer so that we can run the scoring on the building footprints. The next step is then to identify parcels with multiple buildings. In some cases, you may have properties that have apartment complexes and stuff like that that have multiple buildings on it, and you want to be able to use this step to be able to update the building attributes for each one of those buildings in that apartment complex, for example. And then the last step here is where you actually do the performance of the target hazard analysis. And you can see there are multiple steps in here. The first step is to append that to the target hazard layer, so you get started in the process. So your output layer then can have all the information associated to it. Then you can go through the process of reviewing the hazard layer to make sure that you have the appropriate attributes for it in that building layer or whatever you're going to do the analysis on. And then you can assign the hazard criteria. And here's where you go through the process of just picking out what is going to be the category type for each use description. So you can walk through that process and do the same thing for life safety. You just scroll down here and pick the number of floors, the occupancy type. In this case, I'll pick assembly, and then to say it's awake and ambulatory, but not over 2 stories. So we're filling out that criteria as we go here. Then we can go through there and review that criteria to make sure that it's accurate, and make sure that we have what we want. That's really important because the score is only going to reflect what you've put into the criteria. The next step is just to actually calculate it. So this is, again, as I mentioned in that slide earlier, where you can set up the criticality values for each one of the hazard types. And then same thing for the life safety. So if I want to, I can change these and see what's important to me in my particular jurisdiction. And then I can review the hazard score. The next step, of course, then is just apply the symbology, which I've done here on this particular example. We've done it for buildings, so we can take a look at each of these individual buildings. In this case here, we happen to have a library, and you can see where I've assigned it, what its use description was. I've assigned it occupancy type of institutional. It gives me the score for that type. Here's the life safety for it, and the other scores, and then down at the bottom is the total hazard score. And it's done the same thing for all the properties in my jurisdiction here. The last task on the list is how you do the same process only for parcels, and I have done that as well. So I'm just going to show you what that might look like. In this case here, we didn't have building footprints, so we used parcels. So you can take that approach as well as if you need to. So that's kind of a high-level overview of what you get with the target hazard analysis, some of the tasks that you get, some of the sample data, and so on. And as I mentioned, there is a link if you need to. You can go to the solution site and get more information from there about how you can use it. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Kevin Armstrong. He's going to give you a little demonstration about how we can use the target hazard analysis.
All right, thanks, Walt. So as Walt mentioned, this is this target hazard solution. It comes in ArcGIS Pro, and what you're looking at here on my screen is I took some data. I just went to San Diego's open data site. I downloaded their parcel data, and I ran through the target hazard workflow just using their parcel data. So you can see this is a data set from San Diego. I can look at all the target hazard scoring, see all the values and fire flow, see the total hazard score, etc. And again, it doesn't matter if you have buildings, footprints, or you have parcels. You can work with both to create the scoring. So once you've run the tool, though, what's the next step, right? So what I want to walk you through here is how you take this data and operationalize it. So I've scored all these parcels, and I see, obviously by the darker the color, the higher the hazard score. So now how do I go about and use that data to help me begin the pre-plan process? So the first thing we want to do is this target hazard layer. I'm just going to go up to the share tab here, and I'm going to share this and publish it to my ArcGIS Online account. So you can just go through the tool here. This will upload the parcel layer with all the data to my ArcGIS Online account. And just for the sake of time, I've already created that layer. So now I want to actually go and use that layer to prioritize where I'm going to send out my field workers to do the pre-planning activities. So what I'm looking at here is workforce. This is an out-of-the-box application that ships with ArcGIS. And what I've done is I've created a project here to allow us to begin operationalizing that pre-plan data. So in this project, I've created a few assignment types, and one of those is to create a pre-plan. So within this project, we have a map for the dispatcher. And when I open up that map, by default, this is going to show me the locations of all my assignments, where those assignments are and symbolized by the status. But I've taken that target hazard layer that I just published, and I've added that to this map. So now that gives me an extra level of information for my chief or whoever's scheduling out these pre-plans to have to know, hey, where do we begin, or where do we want to focus our efforts when we're out there doing our pre-plans. So I just go to add, search for layer, and I add that target hazard layer and save the map. So now if I go back to my project and I open it up, this will open up the dispatcher view for me. So as a dispatcher, to begin sending folks out to do the pre-plans, now I have that extra layer of information to help me determine where to send folks. So it's very simple to create assignments in this. I can either click on an individual parcel and create assignment, or I can click and drag and select a whole group of parcels. It really is up to you how you want to do it. In this case, I'll just select this particular parcel here, and I'm going to create an assignment there. And it's going to ask me to pick an assignment type, so pre-plan is one of those. I'm going to have somebody do a pre-plan there. I'm going to pick the employee, or someone who has the workforce app that's going to go and do this work. So I'll assign that to myself. I can give it a priority depending on when I want this done, and of course a due date. When do I want this to be completed by? And then if there's any other information I want to type in, I can do that. I can attach a file if maybe I have a photo of the property or some sort of PDF. I can just attach that. So I'm going to go ahead and create that assignment. And now I'm using that information. I've created that assignment. Now I'm going to bring my phone over, and let's say now that I am a mobile worker. So here's my phone. Oh, go back again. So you see that I have that one assignment that's been added. So I can click on that. Now the Workforce app, I'm logged in. It shows me where that location is. So I'm just going to hit the start button at the bottom, and this will notify the dispatcher that I have received this and I have begun working on this pre-plan. So back in the dispatcher view, if you look over here on the left, that status is updated and says it's in progress. So the next thing I want to do is I'm going to go ahead and collect at this assignment. And what this will do is Workforce, behind the scenes in the project, I've linked it to our pre-plan solution. So we have a mobile solution that's, again, it's one of the out-of-the-box apps that you can deploy within ArcGIS. And I'm going to say, go ahead and collect at that particular location. So it'll zoom me in, and I can begin using that app to collect my pre-plan. So I can say, I go through the list. You see I have a list of all the features that I can collect about that particular location. So I can just say, let's do the control panel. I can fill out information like the floor number. If there's any location information I want to enter in, I can just hit done and say submit. And now I'm going through and I'm collecting all that information about the pre-plan itself. And again, if I want to add other features, I can go in there, say maybe there's stairs. If I want to move the stairs to the corner, I can just say update the point. Again, I can submit that information. And I begin sketching out my pre-plan out in the field. So once I'm done and I've created all that information, I can go back to Workforce and say, okay, that pre-plan that you assigned me, I can just hit finish, and I'll see that that is now done. And now on my to-do list, I see I only have one more item to do. So I can begin working through that list of all the pre-plans that, again, are assigned to me, and we're using that target hazard result to really prioritize where we get these pre-plans finished first, and just so we can be more efficient out in the field and have that information collected. So back here in Workforce, you see that I now see that that is completed. So the dispatcher sees that, yep, that one that I assigned is now done. We can go back and we can continue doing those assignments and getting those pre-plans finished. So that's just an overview of how you can take that target hazard data and analysis that you do in desktop and operationalize it using all of the out-of-the-box apps, Workforce and Collector, to begin doing your pre-plans and to really prioritize how you do your work out in the field and be as efficient as possible. And with that, we'll go back to Mike.
Thanks, Kevin. And understand that these capabilities that we're demonstrating, most of the agencies that are online probably already have access to it. So certainly if you have an enterprise agreement, you have access to all this. So one action item for the day is, if you've never gone to the solutions page, please do so, solutions.arcgis.com. And again, we'll send that link out to you, solutions.arcgis.com. But if you go to local government, you'll see a fire department section, fire and EMS section. You'll see a law enforcement section, and then an emergency management is even a broader scope. It's not even under local government. It's just got its own section. But there are many of these solutions that you can simply download and start using today. So no additional cost. You again already got access to it, and you can implement these solutions pretty quickly with your own data. So again, a good way or an easy way to see what's already out there, and what some of the best practices are for taking care of this. Now I'm going to move to our special guests here. So Kevin and Betsy, and Kevin is again with First Due Size Up, and they provide a pre-planning service that really takes this a step further than what we've been demonstrating. So their ability to put data together and a useful application for the front of that fire truck, for the front of the police car, for the front of the ambulance we were just talking about earlier. And it's really revolutionizing the way pre-plans are done. So it's definitely, ease of use and the ability to deploy it across jurisdictional boundaries. You see a lot of regional models they've implemented in the National Capital Region, from the East Coast to several departments in California. So a pretty good use case already being built. So I'll turn it over to you, and please, give us that demonstration.
This is Betsy Chatham from the city of Grapevine. I'm the GIS manager here, and we wanted to share the product First Due, which is a business partner with Esri. As Mike Cox had explained, it's kind of a suite of different things for public safety, and we wanted to kind of take you along our journey on how we implemented this. Okay, so I came to the city of Grapevine just a few years ago, and as a GIS manager, I had many departments to tend to, and pre-fire plan was a very high priority on my list. prior to first due, we had many challenges. We actually just had hard copy paper maps that were very, very out of date, some back into the 90s, and there was no work done on trying to update this information. And so I knew that was going to be a huge challenge to even get those things updated. And in the same breath, after speaking with some of the chiefs, I said this must be very difficult to use during response time. I mean, you just kind of have a paper map, really what's on it. It's hard to read maybe at 3 a.m. when you're barreling down the road. And then furthermore, if and when we did make updates, to share that information with our mutual aid cities was, kind of like, hey, here's our digital files, please print them. It just wasn't working. So I knew that our solution needed to be digital. So after having that conversation with our chiefs, they wanted to even stretch it out even beyond just the mapping side of things. They wanted to bring in permitting and building inspections and other information. So we've turned to First Due, which was more of a business intelligence-based solution. So those were kind of where our challenges and how we were steered towards First Due. Our outline, kind of what our talking points today is, we're going to be talking about how we are moving forward, getting data on every structure, which includes not only commercial, but residential as well, which was a first here for Grapevine. And then better use of our GIS data, our geospatial data. We have a very diverse and robust GIS database here, and we wanted to integrate that information into this platform. And then Kevin will be speaking to Community Connect. It's actually a new component of First Due that we just purchased and have started implementing. We just enjoyed First Due so much, and it was so efficient that we wanted to bring this component into community engagement. And then talking about the data at the time of the response, like what data is our public safety people getting when they're using First Due, and then what is next. Let's see if I do not have control. Next slide, please. Okay, so data, back one, please. Thank you. Data on every structure. So we wanted to go beyond just the, here's this building, this is what's inside it. So one of our first big hurdles that we jumped actually pretty readily first right out of the box was connecting to our assessor data, our tax assessor data. This information was, very important because it brought along, not only is it residential, but the building type, what kind of material is it? Does it have a pool? Does it have, with who the owner is and things like that. And then the building department data, we are actually working on integrating. Unfortunately, here at Grapevine, we have a building permitting system that cannot be integrated. It does not have an IPI. It's a very grassroots system, if you will. But as I understand, many other more robust building permit software can be integrated into First Due, which would be great. I mean, certificate of occupancy. If they're adding on to the, the backyard, our responders going to be dealing with some type of construction. Another tier that we integrated quite readily was our emergency reporting, our records management system in our fire department. This has our fire hydrant information, the flow rates, when it's been inspected, alongside with commercial data, and the API works just wonderful. Excuse me. So, this information that we already had, just with a quick configuration, we're able to get that into First Due. So again, one platform that our responders can use. And then open data. We are an Esri-based shop, obviously. That's why we're here. We are able to push our data into the map interface through map services as well as image services. We have current photography every 3 or 4 months flown. And so we just dropped that image web service in there, which is great, along with our parks, trails, apartment numbering, things like that. So it can integrate with your GIS data. And then another tier that we're going to be moving forward to is any type of social media information that we can push in there. So as I had spoke earlier on the tax assessor data, you can, our residential information. I mean, when you're going to you're being dispatched to these properties, what type of material it is. Is it 2-story, Does it have a basement? Does it not have a basement? We don't have basements here in Texas, even though we probably need them because of the tornadoes. That information is pertinent when we're responding. Next slide, please. And then now we're looking at commercial information. This is just information that we're pulling from emergency reporting, our record management software, from different permitting systems, our permitting and inspection software. We're getting, the contact information, what kind of pre-fire plans already exist, drawings, what the building use is. And this was just on the fly connection. So when information is updated in emergency reporting, it's updated here in First Due. And as you can see, it's very logical. It has tiles that you can get that information. Furthermore, then another part of it is that you can actually be out in the field and you can collect data about your structures. You can drop your points of elevators, alarm panels, HVAC systems, fire connections, and also you can map multi-stories. You have hotels, office buildings, and so okay, our fire is on the 5th floor, our incident is on the 3rd floor, and you can go to that floor within the interface and see that information right at your fingertips. Next slide, please. Furthermore, with the information behind inspections, this is a fuel farm that we have on our west side of town that we want information about. If there's an incident there, you can actually click on a feature that was collected out in the field, and it will tie back to the inspection information on the tank type, how large those tanks are, the capacity. Very important information when going there to respond, and what kind of equipment and things you're going to need. All right there, again, within the First Due interface. Next slide, please. Environmental conditions, excuse me. So a part of the field collection, we are on a lake and we have several marinas, and a big contention with our first responders were, okay, we have, an incident and slip, 427. Okay, great. Well, we need to know where that is. So they actually made this target hazard higher in their priority, and they went and they put annotation in within the First Due interface. We have our parks overlaid on there, as you can see, the green area, and then the data collection points that our firemen put in there. So when they respond to these marinas, it's, their time is spent more efficiently going to where they need to be instead of trying to find where they need to go. So, it's kind of customizable on how your first responders want to collect and put data in. Next slide, please. Kind of zooming out to kind of highlight more of, if you have a great GIS system with all this information that is utilized by your first responders, you can overlay this. This is just a few examples of, we have our fire boxes in there, as well as our hydrants and our parks. We're going to be adding many more layers now that we have the capability to implement our map and image services. Next slide, please. Okay, Community Connect. We're hoping that Kevin will be coming on as he is to speak to these slides.
All right. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
All right, Betsy, thank you very much. And I apologize about the technical difficulty before. Community Connect is absolutely a revolutionary way that we're able to engage with the community. We just now rolled it out in Grapevine, but it's been an evolving part of the First Due platform for several years, and it just keeps growing and getting more and more powerful. And First Due provides you with an out-of-the-box solution that agencies can quickly deploy in their communities to engage their citizens and give them everything that they need to be successful and to appreciate the amazing public relations. Not only a customized website, but all of the supporting documentation and materials such as postcards, press release templates, and other very valuable material. And this is the actual website that your citizens would be able to log in and create an account, which is tied to an email that we can continue to communicate with them. And First Due actually started using this several years ago just to automate the burn permitting process for clients, utilizing Esri to ensure that there were no burn bans in that active area and just keep that at an automated pace so that it allowed the fire department to take care of other tasks and not have to manage that. While we're always expanding the functionality of Community Connect, we actually had Asheville, North Carolina come to us and ask, due to an autism awareness campaign they had in their city, they were wondering if we could use this Community Connect to really help them. Well, it became very quickly apparent to us and to them that it was much bigger than just this one segment of the vulnerable population. And we've expanded it to include an entire host of issues and amazing data that citizens can put in about themselves, about other family members, about their specific structure. And of course, people love to talk about their pets. And so that gives them one more reason to log in and create an account. And all of that amazing data that they've put in about their structure is then able to be visualized in an iconology, very easy to understand way within the First Due dashboard. And we can dive into the specific pieces of those data by simply tapping on each of those tiles, and it gives you more specific data. And then all of that data that's been put in can be pushed back into Esri and analyzed through the tools within Esri and drill down and find out where are all my vulnerable people who maybe are on 24/7 oxygen and really reliant on power if a large tornado goes through. And now I'm going to turn it back over to Betsy and let her talk about the success in Grapevine.
So we're looking at, okay, so we have all this great integrated data from all these resources. Really what's important is how this data can be utilized during the time of response. You know, there's so many questions that go through a first responder's mind, and we're hoping that we can answer a lot of them through all this data integration. The first thing that we integrated before the tax assessor information was our CAD system, which is crimes. As you can see, as you tile across, you can see the different CAD systems that can be integrated into First Due, and I'm sure there's some that are beyond this list. So actually, that dispatcher's notes are entered into the CAD system, and then they show up above the tiles on the call. So any type of conversation that's going on, or any notes that need to be, you know, that are entered in by the dispatch, First Due users in the field can actually see that information. You know, maybe it's a property that they go to quite often, and they, you know, okay, this is the guy that causes a lot of problems when you show up to his property. All sorts of information. You know, if there's somebody that, you know, maybe had not gotten on Community Connect, you know, there's somebody with special needs there. But all that information is right there at their fingertips from dispatch. Next slide, please. Another question, and I think as technical, you know, people in the technology field, is what platforms do they work on? We have people that have Androids, tablets, iPhones, you know, all sorts of things, you know, laptops in their vehicles. I have tested these on every kind of device imaginable, and it works, and it is there, and there is no issues. Another thing is that it works in any type of web browser. It's not, you know, Firefox centric, or it doesn't work on Google Chrome. So there's, you know, huge beauty there, because we all know we have our flavor that we like and we prefer, and we're going to stay on that. So First Due has taken that into consideration, which I think is a huge deal, especially when you probably get to an agency that's much bigger than us here in Grapevine. Next slide. I'll hand it over to Kevin.
Thanks again, Betsy. I'm going to talk about a few brand new things that Betsy is not quite aware of yet and hasn't seen. So the first one is our Occupancy Organizer. And really, this is a powerful tool that allows agencies to very quickly query their structures in any way they'd like to. Just like, show me all of my occupancies that are over 5,000 square feet and have hazmat in them, or any hotels that are over 3 stories. You can then use the organizer to assign those pre-plans to a specific shift, specific units, or even just a specific person. And depending on the hazard or building type, it allows you to prioritize and put on a specific schedule so that those are always up to date and always readily available in the field. And your pre-plans are ensured to be very high quality. I introduced this to Fort Worth Fire Department, which actually is right next to Grapevine, last week. And they actually were doing backflips and beyond excited that we had solved a major problem that they have had for decades. And then all of the data that's put into that occupancy organizer, we've expanded our Community Connect, allowing for the for our commercial building owners and managers to go ahead and create a Community Connect page for their structure and put specific data that would help with the mapping, and also attach images that they want to and attach contacts for their structure. But we've taken that one step further even, and we now have bidirectional communication with those property managers and their building engineers, so that if a 911 call has come into their building, they're going to get notified. They can then go through specific tasks of maybe lowering the elevators to the ground floor or meeting the fire department at a specific location outside the building to get them to where they need to get to quicker, or even calling the fire department off or lowering the grade of response that's being there because they've already discovered that this is a false alarm. So that bidirectional communication with the property owners and building engineers is very, very powerful. And with that, here's how you can get in touch with either Betsy or myself and my team. And I very much appreciate your time. And Mike, back to you.
Thanks, Kevin, and certainly thank you, and thanks, Betsy, for joining us today and educating us on what First Do can do to support localities with that pre-planning effort. It's certainly critical information to provide responders. And just a couple of quick questions, Kevin. So we're always concerned about being able to share data, being able to share or communicate through a platform such as GIS, Excellent Communication Platform. But how interoperable is your product, or do you have issues, or have you seen issues with data sharing with that multi-agency approach?
That's a great question, Mike, and thanks for asking it. It is absolutely completely interoperable, and our model is priced out by population, and then we give you unlimited users and unlimited logins for those users. So absolutely encourage you to share this with your mutual aid and auto aid partners, as well as other agencies within your city that might be able to use the read-only versions of the application. And we've rolled this out in many entire county wide deployments as well as region wide deployments, and it's working extremely well.
Okay, great. So and talk to me about the actual use during operations. So say we had a significant incident that's going to go on for a 12-hour or multiple operational periods. Are you able to kind of adjust that mapping and that pre-planning symbology on the fly? Can you update that map, or can you update the First Do application to support a significant incident like that?
Absolutely. So it's very important that we're tied into dispatch, as Betsy was talking about. So immediately when that call comes in, this pre-plan is available to all of the responding personnel. But then as the scene evolves or as things change, the pre-plan can be adjusted on the fly and republished, and instantly it's available in its new form to everybody on the scene. So it very much allows flexibility from start to call to the very end of it.
And so kind of related to that, special events, have you seen any use? Have you seen departments using it to plan for and then operate during significant special events?
Yes, absolutely. Special event pre-planning, obviously with what's gone on in our communities, is incredibly important, that we don't just pre-plan the structures that we respond to every day, but that we've pre-planned areas for maybe a festival and streets have been blocked off, or a concert's coming to town and you have medical tents and egress, and you know where all of the staging is. And so any of those special event pre-plans can absolutely be developed within our application. And you can even develop things like active shooter pre-plans on a level so that they're tied to the address on any response. And so maybe you got dispatched to, you know, just a unusual odor, but when you got there, it was actually somebody luring you in to a very bad situation, and you can just switch to the level and use that pre-plan instantly.
And that's something I also want to make a point. Even during Walt and Kevin's demonstration, I know this is obviously a fire and EMS webinar, but these applications, particularly First Do, is not fire centric, right? It's not specifically for fire and EMS, although obviously you're getting a lot of great use, Kevin, out of that. But you think about law enforcement and other agencies that would have the need to know, obviously, the characteristics of an occupancy or understand what the hazards were. So it's not just for fire response. You know, you think about mass casualty incidents, active shooters, things of that nature. So and Kevin, you've seen that kind of application already, correct?
Yes, absolutely. We're utilizing that in several of our deployments, both law and fire, as well as EMS. So it's being used by all public safety.
Excellent. All hazards approach, which is what we need. So there are a few more questions we're not going to be able to get to today, but we'll certainly email answers and get you in touch with the right personnel. There will be an email that comes to all attendees with the pertinent links and a link to the recording of this webinar. So if you have friends and neighbors maybe that weren't able to attend, you can certainly forward that link to them and they can watch it at their leisure. So again, I want to thank Kevin and Betsy and Walt and Kevin for coming out today and providing this excellent information on pre-planning and target hazard and risk assessment. And any other questions, please feel free to email me, Mike_Cox@Esri.com. And I'd be remiss if I didn't mention it was GIS Day, so it's International GIS Day. And to celebrate, you can go to Esri.com and see some of the activities and information there related to GIS Day. So thanks again, everyone, for attending, and we'll hope to see you on the next one.